A little girl dashes toward the mailman, tears streaming down her face, her small arm covered in bruises. At first, he assumes she simply fell while playing, but the desperation in her voice tells a far darker story. What happens next will leave you speechless. Watch until the end to uncover the shocking truth. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful stories. Logan Carter gripped the steering wheel of his mail truck, eyes flicking toward the clock on his dashboard. 10:13 a.m. He was running behind schedule, not something that happened often. A stalled vehicle on the main road had forced him to take a detour, throwing off his rhythm. It gnawed at him. Logan took pride in his precision, in the reliability of his daily route through Greenfield Heights, a neighborhood of wide streets and perfectly mowed lawns. It was the kind of place where people exchanged polite nods from their porches, where everything looked neat and orderly. Maybe too orderly, he sometimes thought. As he pulled up to the Whitaker house, he noticed a small figure on the porch. Lily Whitaker, the 9-year-old daughter of the homeowners, sat curled up on the top step, her thin arms wrapped around her knees. Usually, she'd be running around the front yard with her jump rope or chalking colorful drawings onto the pavement. But today she sat still, her bright green dress crumpled and her messy blonde curls hanging in her face. Logan stepped out of the truck, slinging his mailbag over his shoulder. "Morning, Lily," he called, keeping his tone light. "Waiting on something special today?" She flinched at the sound of his voice, looking up as if she hadn't noticed his arrival. "Hi, Mr. Logan," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Logan frowned. Something about her seemed off. He shuffled through his stack of letters. "Doesn't look like you got a package today, but I've got some mail for your folks. Anything good you're reading these days? Last time we talked, you were all about those mystery books." Lily didn't respond right away. She twisted the fabric of her dress in her hands, her knuckles white. Logan's eyes drifted downward, and that's when he saw them, bruises, faint but unmistakable, wrapping around her small wrist like dark fingerprints. His stomach tightened. "Hey, kiddo." He crouched down, lowering his voice. "Everything okay?" Lily tensed. "I'm fine," she said too quickly, shifting her arm behind her back. "Just waiting for my mom." Logan hesitated. His instinct told him to push a little further, but he wasn't sure how. He wasn't a cop or a social worker. He was a mailman. But something about the way she was avoiding his gaze made his chest tighten with unease. "All right," he said finally, handing her the stack of mail. "Tell your mom I said hi, okay?" Lily gave a small nod, gripping the envelopes as if they were a lifeline. Without another word, she turned and disappeared into the house, closing the door softly behind her. Logan lingered for a moment, staring at the Whitaker home. It looked like every other house in Greenfield Heights, white siding, trimmed hedges, a wreath hanging neatly on the front door. But now it felt different. The curtains in the front window were drawn tight, the house eerily still. Normally, Mrs. Stapp Whitaker Emma would pop her head out and chat for a minute, offering a warm smile. Today, the silence felt heavy. Something wasn't right. Back in his truck, Logan sat gripping the ignition key, his mind wrestling with unease. Kids fall all the time, right? He tried to push the thought away. He had a job to do, a schedule to keep. But the image of Lily's bruised arm wouldn't leave him. Logan Carter had been delivering mail for years, long enough to sense when something wasn't right. And right now, something felt very wrong. As he steered his mail truck down the quiet streets of Greenfield Heights, he couldn't shake the image of Lily Whitaker's bruised arm or the nervous way she had twisted the hem of her dress. Kids fall and get bruises all the time, he told himself. But deep down, he knew this wasn't just a scraped knee from playing outside. There was a fear in her eyes, one he couldn't ignore. Logan exhaled sharply and tried to refocus. He had a job to do, a schedule to keep. But the weight in his chest refused to go away. Greenfield Heights had always seemed like a picture-perfect suburb. Neatly trimmed hedges, white picket fences, and driveways lined with bicycles and potted plants. It was the kind of place that looked safe. But Logan knew better. Over the years, he had seen glimpses of the cracks beneath the surface. A woman standing in her driveway, quietly crying into her hands. A house that suddenly went dark overnight, its owners gone without a trace. A man pacing his front yard, shouting angrily into his phone. Now, as he drove past another row of pristine homes, Logan wondered how many stories remained hidden behind those closed doors. He had just pulled over to sort through his next stack of mail when he heard something. Rapid footsteps slapping against the pavement. Logan turned just in time to see Lily. She was running toward him, her face streaked with tears, her breath coming in quick, desperate gasps. "Mr. Logan," she cried, her voice trembling with fear. "Please, you have to help me. My mom, she's hurt." Logan's stomach dropped. He barely had time to set the mail down before she threw herself against him, clutching his arm with trembling hands. "Lily, slow down," he said gently, kneeling to meet her at eye level. "Tell me what happened. What's wrong with your mom?" She was sobbing so hard she could barely speak. "Daddy was so mad," she choked out. He hurt her, and now she's not moving." A cold chill ran down Logan's spine. His mind raced. He had a full route to finish, deadlines to meet, a job he took seriously. But none of that seemed to matter when faced with the terrified plea of a little girl. There was no choice to make. "Okay," he said firmly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Take me to your house. We'll make sure your mom's okay." Lily didn't hesitate. She grabbed his hand and pulled him down the sidewalk, her small legs moving as fast as they could. Logan kept pace beside her, his heart pounding as they neared the Whitaker house. Before they even reached the front steps, a loud crash erupted from inside. Logan froze. The unmistakable sound of glass shattering sent a fresh wave of dread through him. Then came the shouting, muffled but filled with rage. His instincts screamed at him to stop, to call for help and wait. But before he could act, the front door flew open. A tall, broad-shouldered man stormed out onto the porch. Logan recognized him instantly. Matthew Whitaker, Lily's father. His expression was twisted with fury, his face flushed red. He didn't even seem to notice them standing there. His eyes were locked onto the car in the driveway, a sleek black SUV. Without hesitation, he yanked open the driver's side door, threw himself inside, and sped off down the street. Lily let out a shaky breath. "Daddy's gone," she whispered, her voice laced with both fear and relief. Logan swallowed hard, his pulse hammering in his ears. He turned his attention back to the house, where the front door remained open, revealing nothing but darkness inside. He glanced down at Lily. "Stay close to me, okay?" She nodded, gripping his hand tighter. Together, they stepped onto the porch. The house, once just another perfect home in Greenfield Heights, now loomed before him like something out of a nightmare. Logan reached for the door and pushed it open wider. Inside, chaos awaited. The living room looked like a tornado had torn through it. Furniture was overturned, picture frames shattered, and broken glass littered the floor. The acrid scent of spilled alcohol mixed with something metallic, something that made Logan's stomach twist. And then, "Mom?" Lily's voice broke as she spotted a motionless figure sprawled on the carpet. Logan's breath caught in his throat. Emma Whitaker lay on the floor, her face swollen with bruises, her blonde hair matted with blood. For a split second, Logan feared the worst. "Lily, wait," he said quickly, catching her before she could rush to her mother's side. "We need to be careful. Let me check first, okay?" Kneeling beside Emma, Logan pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A pulse. Faint, but there. "She's alive," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Without wasting another second, he pulled out his phone and dialed 911. The operator's calm voice steadied him. "I'm at 106 Brookside Drive," he said quickly. "There's been an assault. The victim is unconscious, and her daughter is here with me." The suspect fled the scene in a black SUV heading east. "We need an ambulance immediately." "Are you with the victim now?" the dispatcher asked. "Yes," Logan replied, glancing at Lily, who was hugging her stuffed rabbit tightly, her small body shaking. "She's badly hurt. There's a lot of blood, and she's not responding." "Stay with her and keep her stable," the dispatcher assured him. "Help is on the way." Logan ended the call and turned to Lily. "It's going to be okay," he said softly. "The ambulance is coming. They're going to take care of your mom." Lily's tears flowed freely now. "I told her we should leave," she sobbed. "I told her Daddy would get mad again, but she said we'd be safe." Logan clenched his jaw, forcing down the anger bubbling inside him. He glanced around the room, taking in the shattered vase by the window, the holes punched into the drywall, the trail of blood leading from the couch to the back door. This wasn't the first time. "Lily," he said gently, "how long has this been happening?" She shook her head, her small hands twisting the ears of her rabbit. "A long time," she whispered. "Mommy said it would stop after the divorce, but Daddy keeps coming back. He gets so angry when she says no." The wail of sirens cut through the night. Lily's eyes widened with hope. "They're here." Logan tightened his grip on her hand. Help had arrived. The flashing red and blue lights reflected off the houses of Greenfield Heights, casting eerie shadows across the neatly trimmed lawns. The quiet, picture-perfect neighborhood was no longer so perfect. Logan Carter tightened his grip on Lily's shoulder as paramedics rushed into the house. She clung to her stuffed rabbit, her small body trembling. Two paramedics knelt beside Emma Whitaker, assessing her injuries. One checked her pulse, while the other spoke into a radio, relaying information back to the ambulance. "She's unconscious but breathing," one of them said. "Severe head trauma, possible broken ribs. We need to transport her now." Lily let out a small whimper as they carefully lifted her mother onto a stretcher. "Mommy?" she whispered, her voice fragile. Logan crouched down beside her. "They're going to take her to the hospital, Lily. She's in good hands now." Tears streamed down her face, but she nodded. A police officer, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, approached. "Sir, are you the one who called this in?" Logan stood, his posture tense. "Yeah, I'm Logan Carter, the mailman. Lily ran to me for help." The officer, her badge read Detective Rachel Monroe, gave him an approving nod. "You did the right thing." She turned to Lily and softened her voice. "Sweetheart, I know this is really scary, but I need to ask you some questions. Can you tell me what happened tonight?" Lily hesitated, her fingers twisting the ears of her rabbit. Logan squeezed her hand gently. "It's okay, Lily. You're safe now." She took a shaky breath. "Daddy was mad. Mommy told him to leave, but he wouldn't. He hit her." Her voice broke, and she pressed the rabbit against her face. "She fell, and she wasn't moving. I didn't know what to do, so I ran to find Mr. Logan." Detective Monroe's expression hardened. "Where did your dad go?" Lily sniffled. "He drove away, in his black car." Monroe nodded and turned to the officers behind her. "We need an APB on Matthew Whitaker. Last seen leaving the scene in a black SUV, heading east." A second officer stepped forward, glancing at Logan. "Sir, can you stay with the child until we can contact family?" "Of course," Logan said without hesitation. Lily's grip on his hand tightened. The paramedics were wheeling Emma toward the ambulance now. "I want to go with her," Lily said suddenly, panic creeping into her voice. Monroe exchanged a glance with Logan. "I'll go with her," Logan said. "She shouldn't be alone." Monroe nodded. "All right, but we'll need to speak with both of you again soon." As the ambulance doors closed behind them, Logan wrapped an arm protectively around Lily. The little girl curled up beside him, her wide, frightened eyes never leaving her mother, who lay unconscious on the stretcher. The ambulance sped toward the hospital, its siren wailing into the night. The ambulance raced through the streets, siren wailing as it cut through traffic. Logan Carter sat beside Lily, feeling the weight of the moment settle deep in his chest. The little girl was curled up against his side, hugging her stuffed rabbit as though it could protect her from the nightmare unfolding around her. Her eyes never left her mother, who lay motionless on the stretcher, an oxygen mask covering her bruised face. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only reassurance that she was still alive. Logan wasn't sure what to say. He had spent years delivering mail, exchanging polite small talk with people on his route, but this was different. The usual boundaries of his job had long since vanished, replaced by an instinct deeper than duty: protect Lily. She broke the silence with a whisper. "I tried to stop him." Logan glanced down at her. "What do you mean?" Lily's fingers twisted the ears of her rabbit. "I told him to leave Mommy alone, but he wouldn't listen. He gets so mad when he drinks. He yells and throws things." Logan clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm. "Has this happened before?" She nodded slowly. "Mommy said it would stop after the divorce, but he keeps coming back. He gets so angry when she says no." Rage bubbled inside Logan, but he kept his voice steady. "You were really brave, Lily. You ran to get help, and that might have saved your mom's life." Lily pressed her face against her rabbit, her small body trembling. "I just want Mommy to wake up." The words hit Logan harder than he expected. He reached for her hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "She's in good hands now. The doctors are going to help her." Lily didn't respond, but she didn't let go of his hand either. The ambulance pulled up to the emergency entrance of the county hospital. Paramedics swung the doors open, moving quickly as they wheeled Emma inside. Logan lifted Lily into his arms, following close behind. The bright fluorescent lights and the sharp scent of antiseptic filled the air as nurses and doctors rushed to meet them. "We have a female, late 30s, unconscious due to blunt force trauma," one of the paramedics called out. "Multiple contusions, possible broken ribs, head injury, needs immediate evaluation." A nurse directed Logan and Lily to the waiting area as Emma was whisked away down the hall. Lily refused to sit down. She stood by the window, her forehead pressed against the glass as she watched the parking lot below. Logan stayed a few steps behind, giving her space but ready to comfort her if needed. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then, finally, a doctor approached. His expression was serious but not grim. "Emma Whitaker?" he asked. Logan nodded, guiding Lily closer. The doctor crouched to Lily's level, his voice gentle. "Your mom is stable. She has a concussion, a dislocated shoulder, and some broken ribs, but she's going to be okay." Lily's lip quivered. "Can I see her?" The doctor smiled kindly. "Not just yet. She needs to rest for a little while, but soon, I promise." Lily wiped her eyes and nodded. As the hours passed, Lily finally got to see her mother. Emma lay in a hospital bed, her face still bruised but calm in sleep. Lily climbed into the chair beside her, gripping her mother's hand tightly, refusing to let go. Logan stepped out into the hallway, rubbing a hand over his face. The events of the night replayed in his mind. Lily's desperate plea, the wreckage of the Whitaker home, Emma lying unconscious on the floor. It felt surreal. Then, another thought hit him. His job. He had abandoned his route, left deliveries undone. His supervisor was going to have questions, ones he wasn't sure how to answer. But as he looked back at Lily, still clutching her mother's hand, he knew one thing for certain. None of that mattered. If he hadn't stopped to help, who would have? Logan Carter leaned against the hospital wall, exhaling slowly. The night had unraveled in a way he never could have imagined. He was just a mailman, someone who was supposed to deliver letters and packages, not rescue a child, call 911, and spend hours in an emergency room. Yet as he looked back into the hospital room where Lily sat beside her unconscious mother, he knew there was nowhere else he should be. "Mr. Logan?" He turned. Lily was standing in the doorway, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. Her eyes were still red from crying, but she managed a small, hesitant smile. "Thank you," she said softly. The words hit Logan harder than he expected. He swallowed, forcing his voice to stay steady. "You don't have to thank me, Lily." She nodded, stepping closer. "You stayed." Logan crouched to meet her at eye level. "Of course I did. I told you. You're not alone." Lily's fingers tightened around the rabbit's ears. "Will you come back?" Logan didn't hesitate. "Always." She sniffled but smiled again, just a little. As the evening wore on, Logan knew he had to leave. He had a job to return to, a schedule that had been completely derailed. He crouched down beside Lily, who was still holding onto her mother's hand. "I have to go back to work now," he said gently. "But I'll check on you and your mom soon, okay?" Lily nodded but didn't let go of her mother's hand. "Okay." Logan reached out and gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder before stepping out of the room. As he walked through the sterile hospital halls, his thoughts raced. He had no idea what kind of trouble he'd face when he returned to the mail depot. But none of that mattered, because tonight he had made a difference. Outside, the cool night air hit him like a wave. The world outside felt jarringly normal, a sharp contrast to the chaos and fear he had just witnessed. Logan checked the clock on his dashboard. 3:15 p.m. He was hours behind schedule. Gripping the steering wheel, he drove back toward the mail depot, his mind still spinning with everything that had happened. By the time he pulled into the parking lot, his heart was pounding. Standing by the entrance, clipboard in hand, was Sharon Daniels, his supervisor. She was a stickler for punctuality, known for her no-nonsense demeanor. Logan sighed. "Here we go." As he stepped out of the truck, Sharon's sharp voice cut through the air. "Carter, you're late. Your GPS shows you went completely off route for over 2 hours. Care to explain?" Logan wiped his palms on his pants. "There was a situation on my route." Sharon's eyebrows raised. "A situation?" Logan took a deep breath. "A little girl, Lily Whitaker. She ran to me for help. Her mom was hurt. I had to do something. Sharon's stern expression softened slightly. Hurt how? Logan quickly recounted the night's events, from Lily's desperate plea to the scene at the Whitaker house and the hospital visit. He kept his voice level, though the emotions threatened to seep through. By the time he finished, Sharon was silent, her gaze unreadable. Then, to Logan's surprise, she nodded. You did the right thing, Carter. Logan blinked. You're not mad? Sharon let out a dry chuckle. Mad? No. Proud? Absolutely. Logan exhaled, tension leaving his shoulders. Just don't make a habit of disappearing without telling me first, she added, her tone lightening. Now get back out there and finish up. A wave of relief washed over him. Thanks, Sharon, he said, giving her a small nod before heading back to his truck. As he approached his final stop of the day, he paused, staring at the bundle of mail in his lap. The simple task suddenly carried a new weight. Lily and Emma weren't the only ones in Greenfield Heights with untold stories. How many others needed help but didn't know how to ask? Logan Carter sat behind the wheel of his mail truck, gripping the steering wheel as his mind replayed the events of the past few hours. He had never been late on his route before, never abandoned his deliveries. But today wasn't a normal day. He had helped save a life, or at least he hoped he had. His phone buzzed. Detective Rachel Monroe. Mr. Carter, we've located Matthew Whitaker, she said, her voice tense. He's on the run, high-speed chase down Highway 42. He's desperate. Logan's stomach twisted. Are they going to catch him? Monroe hesitated. We're doing everything we can. But listen, I need you to be prepared. He's dangerous and he's not thinking straight. What do you mean? Logan asked, a sinking feeling settling in his chest. He made a call before the chase started, Monroe said, to Emma's house phone. We think. A loud crash echoed from his phone's speaker, followed by shouting. Damn it, he's off the highway. He just turned back toward town. Logan shot upright in his seat. Back toward town? Back toward Emma and Lily. Matthew wasn't running. He was going back for them. Meanwhile, at Emma's house, Lily sat curled up on the couch, her stuffed rabbit pressed against her chest. The house was quiet, too quiet, and that made her uneasy. Emma had just gotten off the phone with her lawyer, discussing restraining orders and custody hearings. It was supposed to be over. Matthew was supposed to be gone. But something in her gut told her otherwise. A shadow moved outside the front window. Emma froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. Then, bang, bang, bang! A fist pounded against the front door. Emma, open the damn door, Lily whimpered, shrinking into the couch. Emma's blood turned to ice. Matthew. He was supposed to be in custody. He was supposed to be gone. Mommy, Lily whispered. Emma's mind raced. Call the police. Get Lily to safety. Stay calm. She grabbed the phone, hands shaking as she dialed. But before she could press call, crash! The front door burst open. Matthew stormed inside, his eyes wild, his breath ragged. His clothes were torn, his knuckles bloody from fighting his way back here. Where the hell do you think you're going? He spat, slamming the door behind him. Emma grabbed Lily, shielding her behind her body. Matthew, get out. The cops are coming. He let out a bitter laugh. You think a few cops are gonna stop me? His eyes flicked to Lily. She's mine too. Lily sobbed, burying her face into Emma's back. Emma clenched her fists. She had been afraid of him for too long. She wasn't running anymore. You need to leave, she said firmly. Now. Matthew's expression darkened. You don't get to tell me what to do. Then he lunged. Emma barely had time to react before his hands were on her, shoving her back. She hit the coffee table hard, pain exploding in her ribs. Mommy, Lily screamed. Emma gasped, trying to push herself up, but Matthew was towering over her, his hands curled into fists. This was it. She was going to die. And then, a voice shouted from behind. Get away from her. A blur of motion. And then Matthew was yanked backward. Logan. He had arrived just in time. Logan tackled Matthew, sending them both crashing into the floor. Matthew fought like a madman, landing a punch to Logan's jaw. But Logan didn't stop. He grabbed Matthew by the collar and slammed him back down. You don't touch them, Logan growled. Matthew thrashed, trying to break free. She's my daughter. She's not yours to hurt, Logan shot back. Then, sirens, flashing red and blue lights flooded the room as officers stormed in. 2 cops tackled Matthew, wrenching his arms behind his back. It's over, Detective Monroe said, stepping forward. You're done. Matthew screamed in frustration, but the handcuffs clicked shut. Emma pulled Lily into her arms, holding her as tight as she could. Logan, breathing heavily, sat back against the wall. His hands were still shaking. It was over. This time, for real. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. Emma was trembling, her body still in shock. Lily sobbed into her shoulder. Detective Monroe crouched next to them. "Are you both okay?" Emma nodded weakly. "I think so." "You'll need to go to the hospital," Monroe said gently, "just to be safe." Emma didn't argue. She wasn't going to make the mistake of pretending everything was fine. Lily clung to Logan. "You saved us." Logan swallowed hard. "I just did what I had to do." Emma met his eyes. "No, Logan. You did more than that." Outside, Matthew was shoved into the back of a police car, screaming about how he had been set up. Nobody believed him. For the first time in years, Emma and Lily were truly safe. But as Logan watched them climb into the ambulance, he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning. The flashing red and blue lights cast eerie shadows across the Whitaker home as Matthew Whitaker was shoved into the back of a police cruiser. He was still screaming, "This isn't over. You hear me, Emma? You can't take her from me. You." Slam. The officer shut the car door, muffling his furious shouts. Detective Rachel Monroe watched as the car pulled away, her jaw tight. "He's done," she muttered. "For good this time." Inside the house, Logan Carter sat on the floor, rubbing his sore jaw where Matthew had landed a punch. His heart was still pounding, adrenaline coursing through his veins. It had been too close. Way too close. Emma was sitting on the couch, clutching Lily in her arms. The little girl had stopped crying since the attack. "Is he really gone?" Lily whispered. Emma stroked her daughter's hair. "Yes, baby. He can't hurt us anymore." But even as she said the words, her hands trembled, because deep down, she knew the damage was already done. At the hospital. Hours later, Emma sat in a sterile hospital room, her ribs wrapped in bandages. The doctor had confirmed she had 2 cracked ribs and bruising all along her side from where Matthew had thrown her. It would take weeks to heal. But the worst injuries weren't the ones on her body. They were the ones in her mind. The ones in Lily's. Logan knocked gently on the doorframe. "Hey, how are you holding up?" Emma gave a weak smile. "I'll survive." Lily was curled up on the hospital bed beside her mother, her small fingers gripping Emma's sleeve. She hadn't let go since they arrived. Logan hesitated, then stepped inside. I brought something." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small stuffed mail truck, a toy from a promotional event years ago. Lily blinked at it. Logan shrugged. "I figured maybe your rabbit could use a friend." A tiny smile flickered across Lily's tear-streaked face. "Thank you, Mr. Logan." She took the toy and held it tightly in her arms. Emma swallowed hard. "You didn't have to stay." Logan met her eyes. "Yeah, I did." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Emma let out a shaky breath. "It's not over, is it?" Logan frowned. "What do you mean?" Emma looked down at Lily, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "She's going to remember this. The fear, the screams, the way he—" She stopped, swallowing against the lump in her throat. "I don't know how to fix this, Logan," she whispered. Logan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You don't fix it overnight. You take it one step at a time." Emma nodded, but the exhaustion in her eyes was undeniable. A nurse poked her head in. "Mrs. Whitaker? There's someone here from Child Protective Services who would like to speak with you." Emma's stomach dropped. Logan immediately stiffened. "CPS?" The nurse nodded. "Standard procedure in domestic violence cases involving children." Emma's heart pounded as a woman in a gray suit stepped inside. Another fight was just beginning. Emma Whitaker's heart pounded as the woman from Child Protective Services stepped into the hospital room. She was in her late 40s, dressed in a professional gray suit, her dark eyes scanning the room with practiced observation. A clipboard rested in her hands, her expression unreadable. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said, her voice cool but not unkind. "I'm Andrea Parker with CPS. I understand you were involved in a domestic violence incident earlier tonight." Emma swallowed, her grip tightening on Lily, who was still curled up beside her. "Yes," she said cautiously. "I'd like to ask you a few questions." Andrea's gaze flickered toward Lily. "Privately." Emma's stomach twisted. "I'm not leaving my daughter." Andrea sighed as if she had heard this argument before. "I understand this is difficult, but my job is to ensure Lily's safety. If she remains in your care, I need to know that she won't be in any more danger. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Wait, Logan interrupted, stepping forward. Are you saying Emma could lose custody? Andrea turned to him. We don't make decisions lightly, Miss Logan Carter, he said. I was there. I saw everything. Andrea nodded. Then you understand why we need to investigate. Lily was in the home during the attack. That alone raises concerns. Emma felt like she had been punched in the gut. I did everything I could to protect her, she protested. I left him. I got a restraining order. He broke in. I called the police. Andrea's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Whitaker, I know you love your daughter, but I also know that abusers don't just stop. They find ways to manipulate, to return. We've seen too many cases where mothers thought they had escaped, only for the abuser to come back and hurt them worse. Emma felt her body start to shake. No, this couldn't be happening. She had fought so hard to protect Lily, and now they were treating her like the problem? Emma is a good mother, Logan said firmly. Lily ran to me for help because she knew her mom was in danger. That should tell you everything. Andrea studied him for a moment, then sighed. Look, I'm not here to take your daughter away, but there will be an evaluation. You'll need to prove that you can provide a safe environment for her. Emma's hands curled into fists. And if I fail, Andrea's voice was matter of fact, then Lily will be placed in foster care. The words hit like a physical blow. Lily, hearing the fear in her mother's voice, clung tighter to Emma. I don't want to go anywhere, she whispered. Andrea scribbled something on her clipboard. We'll arrange a home visit in the next few days. She glanced at Logan. I assume you'll be around? Logan nodded without hesitation. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. Andrea closed her folder. Good, because this isn't over yet. And with that, she left. The weight of the unknown, Emma sat frozen, her mind racing. Foster care. They wanted to take Lily away? After everything she had done to keep her safe? Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Emma, Logan said gently, we'll fight this. She looked at him, her voice hollow. I shouldn't have to fight. Logan sighed. I know, but sometimes the world isn't fair. That's why we don't give up. Emma exhaled shakily, running her fingers through Lily's hair. She had survived Matthew. Now, she had to survive this. Emma Whitaker sat in the dim hospital room, staring blankly at the beige walls. Lily was asleep in the bed beside her, her small fingers still curled around the stuffed mail truck Logan had given her. Emma had spent years surviving Matthew's wrath. She had fought to escape, to build a new life for her daughter. And now, after everything, they still wanted to take Lily away. Her fists clenched. No. That wasn't going to happen. A knock on the door made her jump. Logan stepped inside, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He handed her one before taking a seat beside her. You holding up? He asked. Emma let out a dry laugh. Let's see. My ribs are cracked, my ex nearly killed me, and now CPS thinks I'm not fit to raise my own daughter. She shook her head. So yeah, Logan, I'm doing great. Logan took a sip of his coffee, watching her. I get why you're angry. Emma exhaled sharply. Do you? Because I did everything right. I left. I got the restraining order. I called the cops, and now I have to prove I deserve to keep my child? I know, Logan said softly. It's not fair, but you're not going to lose her. Emma scoffed. How can you be so sure? Logan leaned forward. Because you're a damn good mother, Emma, and I've seen what happens when a kid doesn't have one. She frowned, sensing something heavier behind his words. Logan, he hesitated, then sighed. My mom left when I was 7. My dad was a mess, drank too much, worked too little. Social workers came knocking a few times, but I slipped through the cracks. He let out a bitter chuckle. I was just another kid in a bad situation that nobody wanted to deal with. Emma stared at him, realizing for the first time how little she actually knew about the man who had risked everything to protect her and Lily. I don't want Lily to end up like that, Logan continued. And she won't, because she has you. Emma swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling in. For the first time in hours, the ice in her chest thawed just a little. The next day, the home inspection. Andrea Parker from CPS arrived at Emma's house early the next morning, clipboard in hand, her expression unreadable. Logan was already there, standing beside Emma as an unspoken shield of support. Andrea stepped inside, her sharp eyes scanning the living room. Let's begin. She checked everything. The locks, the food in the fridge, the cleanliness of the home. She asked Lily gentle but pointed questions about her life. Lily answered bravely, but Emma could see the tension in her daughter's small frame. When Andrea finally put down her clipboard, the air felt razor thin. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said carefully, "you've taken the right steps. You've left an abusive situation. You have a stable home." Emma held her breath. "But," Andrea continued, "our concern isn't just your ability to provide, it's safety. If Matthew Whitaker ever gets out, what's stopping him from coming back?" Emma's stomach twisted. "He's going to prison." Andrea gave her a knowing look. "For now." Emma opened her mouth to argue, but Logan spoke first. "She's not alone," he said firmly. Andrea turned to him. "I live in this neighborhood. I'm here every day," Logan continued. "If Matthew comes back, I'll know, and I'll make damn sure he doesn't get near them again." Andrea studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll be filing my report," she said, flipping her clipboard shut. "You'll have my final decision soon." Then she was gone. Emma slumped onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. "I hate this," she whispered. Logan sat beside her. "I know." A silence stretched between them. Then, "Thank you," Emma murmured. Logan glanced at her. "For what?" "For standing up for us." Logan shrugged. "Someone had to." Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time she realized Logan Carter had walked into their lives as a mailman. But he had become so much more. The waiting was unbearable. Emma Whitaker had spent years surviving Matthew's control, months fighting to break free, and now she was stuck in limbo, waiting for someone else to decide if she was fit to keep her own daughter. She paced the small living room, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Logan sat on the couch, watching her, but saying nothing. He knew she needed to let the frustration out. 2 days had passed since the CPS inspection. 2 days of tension. 2 days of fearing that a single mistake, a single wrong answer, could cost her everything. A knock at the door made her freeze. Lily looked up from the kitchen table, her wide eyes darting between her mother and Logan. Emma forced herself to breathe. "It's okay. You can handle this." She walked to the door and opened it. Andrea Parker stood on the porch, holding a manila folder. Emma's stomach twisted into knots. "Is this it?" Andrea nodded, handing her the folder. "My full report is inside, but I wanted to tell you in person." Emma couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Andrea's expression softened. "You're keeping your daughter, Mrs. Whitaker." Emma's knees nearly buckled. "I am." Andrea nodded. "You've proven that you can provide a safe, stable home. And with Mr. Whitaker facing serious prison time, we believe the immediate threat has been neutralized." Emma clutched the folder to her chest, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you." Andrea gave a small smile. "Just keep doing what you're doing, and if you ever need resources, counseling, legal aid, we can help." Emma nodded quickly. "Yes, absolutely, thank you." Andrea glanced at Logan. "And you?" Logan raised an eyebrow. "Me?" Andrea smirked. "You're not officially family, but it's clear you care. If you're planning to stick around, that's a good thing." Logan glanced at Emma. Their eyes met for a brief moment before he turned back to Andrea. "I'm not going anywhere," he said simply. Andrea nodded in approval. "Good." With that, she left. Emma closed the door and turned to Lily, who was still gripping her stuffed rabbit. "Mommy?" Lily whispered. "Does this mean I get to stay?" Emma's breath caught. She knelt in front of her daughter, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Yes, baby. You're staying with me. Always." Lily sniffled but smiled, hugging her mother tightly. Across the room, Logan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. For the first time in weeks, it felt like the nightmare was finally over. Later that evening, Emma stood on the front porch, staring up at the night sky. The weight that had been crushing her for so long was finally lifting. She heard the door open behind her, then felt Logan step up beside her. "You okay?" he asked. Emma exhaled. "Yeah, I think I am." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Emma glanced at him. "You know, you never had to get involved in all this, but you did." Logan smirked. "What can I say? I'm a sucker for a good underdog story." Emma chuckled. "Seriously, Logan." Her voice softened. "You changed everything for us." Logan shrugged. "You did the hard part, Emma. I was just there to make sure you didn't have to do it alone." She looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. And that was everything. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the charges against Matthew Whitaker. Emma sat in the front row, her hands gripping the edge of her seat. Lily sat beside her, clutching Logan's hand so tightly that her small fingers turned white. Logan could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. He had faced danger before, confronted Matthew in Emma's home, seen the damage he had left behind, but this was different. This was justice. The prosecutor, Angela Carter, stepped forward. "Your Honor, today's case is about more than just domestic violence. It's about a man who believed he could control, manipulate, and harm without consequence. A man who thought his family was his possession, not people with the right to live free of fear." She turned toward the jury. "And today, we proved that he was wrong." Emma exhaled shakily, squeezing Lily's hand for comfort. She had spent years being afraid of Matthew. Today, she was done being afraid. Emma takes the stand. When it was her turn to testify, Emma walked to the witness stand with slow, deliberate steps. She took the oath, then met the prosecutor's gaze. "Mrs. Whitaker," Angela said, her voice calm but firm, "can you describe the night of the attack?" Emma took a deep breath. "Matthew broke into my house. He was furious, screaming about how I was taking Lily away from him." Her voice wavered, but she didn't stop. "I told him to leave. He wouldn't. He shoved me so hard I hit the coffee table. I cracked 2 ribs. Angela nodded. "And what happened next?" Emma's hands clenched into fists. "I thought he was going to kill me. But then, Logan Carter came in. He pulled Matthew off me. He stopped him." Angela turned to the jury. "Let the record show that if Mr. Carter had not intervened, this case might have ended in murder." Matthew let out a low scoff from the defense table. Emma snapped her gaze toward him. For the first time in years, she looked him in the eye. And she didn't feel small anymore. "You don't scare me anymore," she said, her voice steady. "You never will again." Matthew's smirk faltered. The jury took note. Lily's testimony. The courtroom was dead silent when Lily took the stand. She looked so small sitting in the chair, her stuffed rabbit sitting in her lap. But when the prosecutor asked, "Lily, do you remember what happened that night?" she nodded bravely. "He was yelling," she said in a small voice. "Mommy told him to leave, but he wouldn't. He was really mad, and then he pushed her." Lily hesitated, looking toward her mother. Emma gave her a reassuring nod. Lily swallowed hard. "I was scared, so I ran to find Mr. Logan." Angela turned to the jury. "This little girl had to run for help because her own father was a threat to her mother's life." Matthew's lawyer tried to cross-examine Lily, painting her as a confused child. But Lily, 8-year-old, once frightened Lily, held her ground. "I know what I saw," she said firmly. The jury took note again. Logan takes the stand. Logan wasn't used to being the center of attention, but today he needed to be. When the prosecutor asked why he got involved, he kept his answer simple. "I couldn't just walk away," he said. Lily needed help. Emma needed help. And I wasn't going to pretend I didn't see what was happening. The defense attorney tried to discredit him. "You're just a mailman," the man sneered. "You're not a cop, not a social worker. What made you think this was your business?" Logan's jaw tightened. "I deliver mail," he said. "I see people's lives from the outside every single day. And I've learned that sometimes the difference between saving a life and ignoring a cry for help is just paying attention." The courtroom was silent. The jury took note one last time. The verdict. It didn't take long for the jury to decide. Guilty. Matthew Whitaker was sentenced to 15 years in prison for domestic assault, child endangerment, and violating a restraining order. The judge's gavel slammed down. Court is adjourned. It was over. A new chapter outside the courthouse. Emma exhaled deeply, the weight of years finally lifting off her shoulders. Lily squeezed her hand. "We're really safe now, right?" Emma knelt down, brushing her daughter's hair back. "Yes, baby, we're really safe now." Lily turned to Logan and hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Mr. Logan." Logan chuckled, ruffling her hair. "Anytime, kiddo." Emma looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved our lives." Logan shook his head. "You saved yourselves, Emma. I just helped." For the first time in years, Emma didn't feel like a victim. She felt free, and she knew. This wasn't just the end of something. It was the beginning of something better. 1 month had passed since the trial. The autumn air was crisp as Logan Carter walked his usual mail route through Greenfield Heights. The streets looked the same, pristine homes, neatly trimmed hedges, kids riding bikes. But Logan saw things differently now. Behind every door, there was a story. Some filled with warmth and love, Others, hidden struggles. And sometimes all it took was one person paying attention to change everything. He turned the corner onto a familiar driveway. A modest, cheerful house stood at the edge of the neighborhood. The porch was decorated with potted plants and a wind chime, tinkling softly in the breeze. Before Logan could reach the mailbox, the front door swung open. "Mr. Logan!" Lily came running out, her stuffed rabbit in one hand, a new stuffed mail truck in the other. Logan grinned. "Hey kiddo, what's up?" Lily beamed. "We made cookies. Want to try some?" He glanced at the mail in his hand. His schedule was ahead of time today. Why not? A house that feels like home inside. The house felt different, warm, inviting, filled with light and laughter, something that had been missing for so long. Emma stood in the kitchen, setting out a plate of homemade cookies. "Careful," she warned. Lily was in charge of the sugar, so if you go into a sugar coma, that's on her. Lily giggled. "I only put a little extra." Logan took a bite. "Wow, you might have a future in baking, kid." Lily puffed up with pride. As she ran off to grab some milk, Emma leaned against the counter, watching her daughter with soft eyes. "It feels normal again," she murmured. Logan looked at her. "It feels like home." Emma nodded. "Yeah, it does." For so long she had been surviving. Now, she was living. A promise to always be there. Lily returned, plopping down at the kitchen table. "Mommy says you're a hero, Mr. Logan." Logan chuckled. "I think your mom's the real hero." Emma shook her head. "We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you." Logan hesitated. He wasn't used to hearing things like that. "I just did what anyone would do," he said. Emma met his gaze. "No, Logan, you did what no one else did. You saw us, and you acted." For the first time, Logan let those words sink in. Maybe he wasn't just a mailman. Maybe, in some small way, he had made a difference. As he stood to leave, Lily grabbed his hand. "You'll still come visit, right?" Logan crouched down to her level. "Of course, kiddo. I'm always around." She grinned. "Good." And with that, she wrapped her arms around him in a tight hug. Logan wasn't sure when he had become part of this family, but he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going anywhere. The final walk. As Logan left the Whitaker house and continued his route, he felt lighter. He passed houses he had delivered mail to for years, but they no longer felt like just stops on a map. They were homes, filled with people and stories and hidden battles. And now he understood. Sometimes the greatest difference you can make is just noticing when someone needs help. Because heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they deliver mail.